Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most thrilling encounters in chess history, the epic showdown between Anatoly Karpov and Garry Kasparov during the 1985 World Championship. In this video, we'll analyze each move of this exciting game, exploring the strategies and tactics employed by both players. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned chess lover, there's plenty to learn from their intense rivalry. So grab your chessboard, get comfortable, and let's jump right into the action. Pawn to e4, Karpov opens with the king's pawn, establishing control in the center. Pawn to c5, Kasparov responds with the Sicilian Defense, aiming for dynamic counterplay. Knight to f3, Karpov develops his knight, attacking the central pawn on d4. Pawn to d6, Kasparov reinforces the pawn structure in the center. Pawn to d4, Karpov strikes in the center, looking to exchange pawns. Pawn takes on d4, Kasparov captures the pawn, opening the position. Knight takes on d4, Karpov recaptures with the knight, maintaining central control. Knight to f6, Kasparov develops his knight, putting pressure on the pawn at e4. Knight to c3, Karpov develops his other knight, supporting the center. Pawn to a6, Kasparov prepares for a possible b5 pawn push, gaining space on the queen side. Bishop to e2, Karpov opts for a solid setup, preparing to castle. Pawn to e6, Kasparov prepares to develop his light-squared bishop and reinforces the center. King to safety, Karpov castles kingside, bringing safety to his king. Bishop to e7, Kasparov develops his bishop, preparing to castle. Pawn to f4, Karpov expands on the king's side, aiming for an aggressive setup. King to safety, Kasparov castles kingside, ensuring the king's safety. King to h1, Karpov moves the king to h1, removing a potential back rank threat. Queen to c7, Kasparov connects his pieces and prepares for central play. Pawn to a4, Karpov gains space on the queen side, preventing b5. Knight to c6, Kasparov develops his knight, increasing control in the center. Bishop to e3, Karpov develops his bishop, preparing for potential shifts in the center. Rook to e8, Kasparov brings his rook to the center, supporting the e-file. Bishop to f3, Karpov repositions his bishop, targeting the c6 knight and preparing to double on the e-file. Rook to b8, Kasparov places his rook on an open file, eyeing b2. Queen to d2, Karpov connects his rooks, increasing his coordination. Bishop to d7, Kasparov develops his bishop, preparing to connect his rooks. Knight to b3, Karpov repositions his knight, aiming for better squares. Pawn to b6, Kasparov prevents Karpov's knight from becoming too active. Pawn to g4, Karpov pushes on the king's side, looking to launch an attack. Bishop to c8, Kasparov retreats his bishop, preparing it for action against potential kingside threats. Pawn to g5, Karpov attacks the knight's position, looking to break through. Knight to d7, Kasparov relocates his knight to a safer square, reinforcing the f6 knight. Queen to f2, Karpov organizes his pieces and puts pressure on f7. Bishop to f8, Kasparov moves his bishop back, supporting the knight on f6. Bishop to g2, Karpov develops his bishop, aiming at the center and king side. Bishop to b7, Kasparov deploys his bishop, creating a strong diagonal for future play. Rook to d1, Karpov centralizes his rook, exerting pressure on the d-file. Pawn to g6, Kasparov plays g6, looking to solidify the pawn structure and prepare for potential piece maneuvers. Bishop to c1, Karpov retreats the bishop, possibly aiming to reposition it to a more effective diagonal. Rook to c8, Kasparov doubles his rooks on the c-file, enhancing pressure on the queen side. Rook to d3, Karpov moves his rook for potential doubling on the d-file, aiming to control the center. Knight to b4, Kasparov places his knight on b4, targeting the a2 and c2 pawns while putting pressure on white's position. Rook to h3, Karpov lifts his rook to h3, preparing for possible kingside attacks or strengthening his defenses. Bishop to g7, Kasparov develops his bishop, aiming to control the long diagonal and support the pawn on f5. Bishop to e3, Karpov moves his bishop to e3 to reinforce the d4 knight and prepare for future tactical options. Rook to e7, Kasparov positions his rook on e7, possibly preparing to double rooks on the e-file. King to g1, Karpov moves his king to g1 for safety and to connect his rooks. Rook to e8, Kasparov places his rook on e8, ready to exert pressure on the e-file. Rook to d1, Karpov repositions his other rook to d1, strengthening his control over the center. Pawn to f5, Kasparov initiates an aggressive pawn move, aiming to open lines and activate his pieces. Pawn takes on f6, Karpov captures the f6 pawn, creating an imbalance in the pawn structure. Knight takes on f6, Kasparov recaptures, centralizing his knight and reinforcing his position. Rook to g3, Karpov activates his rook, preparing for potential attacks on the king's side. Rook to f7, Kasparov consolidates his position while supporting his knight and maintaining control over f7. Bishop takes on b6, Karpov captures the b6 pawn, grabbing material and aiming for the knight's position. Queen to b8, Kasparov counters by moving his queen to b8, intending to pin the bishop. Bishop to e3, Karpov retreats his bishop, optimizing its position while keeping the knight under control. Knight to h5, Kasparov shifts his knight to h5, positioning for tactical threats against white's king. Rook to g4, Karpov repositions his rook to g4, contemplating moves against the h5 knight and the king's side. Knight takes on f6, increasing pressure on white's position. Rook to h4, Karpov plays rh4, eyeing the h5 knight and planning to initiate kingside play. Pawn to g5, Kasparov pushes the pawn to g5, defending his knight and challenging the integrity of white's position. Pawn takes on g5, Karpov captures the pawn on g5, furthering his attack on the king's side. Knight goes to g4, Kasparov reactivates his knight to g4, immediately threatening the f2 pawn and applying pressure on the back rank. Queen to d2, Karpov develops his queen, eyeing the knight and attempting to consolidate his pieces. Knight takes on e3, Kasparov captures on e3, further simplifying and threatening white's position. Queen captures the knight on e3, Karpov recaptures, keeping material balance but positioning is now critical. Knight takes on c2, Kasparov captures the pawn on c2 with the knight, threatening to win back material or create a passed pawn. Queen to b6, Karpov moves his queen to b6, hoping to bring pressure on the b2 pawn while challenging the coordination of black's pieces. Bishop to a8, Kasparov retreats the bishop to a8, aiming to keep the b7 pawn secure and maintain a defensive posture. Rook takes on d6, Karpov captures the knight on d6, trying to create counterplay and open lines against Kasparov's position. Rook to b7, Kasparov places his rook on b7, attacking the queen on b6 and increasing pressure on white's position. Queen takes on a6, Karpov grabs the pawn on a6 with his queen, seeking material balance and preparing to retreat if necessary. Rook takes on b3, Kasparov captures on b3, winning material and maintaining a strong, active rook. Rook takes on e6, Karpov responds by capturing on e6, eliminating a critical piece in Kasparov's position. Rook takes on b2, Kasparov captures the b2 rook, consolidating his advantage by keeping pressure on white's position. Queen to c4, Karpov moves his queen to c4, looking to create threats and possibly pin the rook. King to h8, Kasparov moves his king to safety on h8, preparing for potential attacks while ensuring there are no threats along the back rank. Pawn to e5, Karpov pushes the pawn to e5, trying to open lines and create complications in the position. Queen to a7 with check, Kasparov checks the king with his queen, forcing Karpov to respond. King to h1, Karpov moves his king to h1, seeking safety from the check. Bishop takes on g2 with check, Kasparov captures the pawn on g2, forcing Karpov into a difficult position. King takes on g2, Karpov captures back with the king, but the position has become increasingly vulnerable. Knight to d4 with check, Kasparov delivers a check with his knight, putting Karpov in a position where defeat is imminent. At this point, Karpov resigns. The position is hopeless for him, with significant material disadvantage and an exposed king. Conclusion: Kasparov's victory showcases his tactical prowess and ability to capitalize on Karpov's mistakes, demonstrating the depth of his understanding in the late middle game. If you would like to discuss any particular strategies or explore specific positions further, just let me know. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more chess content. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite moment from the game? Until next time, keep honing your skills and enjoy every move on the chessboard.